5 children left for school on a warm Tuesday morning in Beaumont, Texas on March 15, 1983. Their mother dropped them off at the corner like she did every day, watching them walk toward Jefferson Elementary with their backpacks and lunch boxes. They never arrived at school. They were never seen again. The Martinez family lived in a modest house on Maple Street, 6 blocks from Jefferson Elementary School. It was the kind of neighborhood where children could walk to school safely and neighbors knew each other's names. Maria Martinez, 34, worked as a registered nurse at Beaumont General Hospital. Her husband, Carlos, 36, was a mechanic at the Ford dealership. Together, they had 5 children: Carlos Jr., 14, Sofia, 12, twins Miguel and Ana, both 10, and little Rosa, just 6 years old. March 15, 1983, began like any other Tuesday. Maria woke the children at 7 o'clock, made breakfast, and packed their lunchboxes with sandwiches and homemade cookies. The children's morning routine was well established. Carlos Jr. helped the younger ones with their backpacks, Sofia braided Ana's hair, and Rosa practiced reading from her picture book. At 8:15, they were ready to leave for school. Maria drove them to the corner of Maple and Oak Streets, as she did every morning. The school was only 4 blocks away, an easy walk the children had made hundreds of times. "Be good today," Maria called as they climbed out of the car. "Carlos, make sure Rosa holds someone's hand crossing the street." "I will, Mama," Carlos Jr. replied, taking his youngest sister's hand. "Come on, everybody, we don't want to be late." Maria watched her 5 children walk down Oak Street toward Jefferson Elementary. Carlos Jr. walked protectively on the outside. Sofia carried Ana's backpack along with her own. Miguel bounced alongside them, and little Rosa skipped between them all, chattering about her art project. It was 8:23 a.m. when Maria last saw her children. She waited until they rounded the corner onto Jefferson Street, then drove home to get ready for her shift at the hospital. But they never arrived at school. The first sign something was wrong came at 9:15 a.m. when Jefferson Elementary's attendance office called. Mrs. Patterson, the school secretary, explained that all 5 Martinez children were marked absent without notice. Maria assumed there had been some miscommunication and asked the school to check again. At 10:30 a.m., Mrs. Patterson called again. The children definitely weren't in school. Their teachers were concerned because it was unusual for any of them to be absent, especially Carlos Jr., who had perfect attendance. Maria called her husband, and Carlos Sr. immediately left work to help search. They drove the route between home and school 3 times, looking for any sign of where the children might have gone. At 11:45 a.m., they found the children's school books scattered along Highway 90, 15 miles southeast of Beaumont. A state trooper had spotted them and called them in when he noticed they were marked with Jefferson Elementary's stamp. Carlos Sr. identified each book immediately: Carlos Jr.'s algebra textbook, Sofia's history book, Miguel's science workbook, Ana's reading primer, and Rosa's picture book about farm animals. But there was no sign of the children themselves. The Beaumont Police Department launched an immediate search. Highway 90 was closed while officers and volunteers combed the roadside. Search dogs came from Houston. The National Guard provided helicopters to scan the dense forest of Big Thicket. Detective Frank Morrison had worked missing children cases before, but never anything like this. 5 children from the same family didn't just vanish simultaneously. The FBI arrived on the 3rd day. Special Agent Catherine Walsh established a command center and began coordinating a massive search effort. The first major clue came from a gas station attendant on Highway 90. Tommy Rodriguez remembered seeing something unusual on March 15th around 9:30 a.m. "There was this van," Tommy told investigators, "dark blue, kinda beat up. Guy came in to buy gas, but I could hear kids talking in the back, not playing or laughing, more like they were scared. The guy seemed nervous, kept looking over his shoulder." Tommy provided a detailed description. White male, approximately 40 years old, average height, brown hair, wearing a denim jacket and baseball cap. The man had paid cash for gas and left quickly. Despite an extensive manhunt, the van and its driver were never found. As days turned to weeks, the case generated national attention. The story of 5 children vanishing on their way to school captured the public's imagination. Volunteers came from across Texas to help search. Donations poured in to support the family. Tips flooded in from across the country, but none proved credible. The psychological toll on Maria and Carlos Sr. was devastating. Maria stopped eating and sleeping, spent her days walking the streets calling her children's names. Carlos Sr. threw himself into the search obsessively, following up on every tip personally. After 6 months, the FBI scaled back their presence. After a year, daily searches ended. After 2 years, the case was classified cold. The Martinez family never recovered. Maria suffered a nervous breakdown in 1985 and was hospitalized for 3 months. Carlos Sr. lost his job after missing too many days following false leads. The couple divorced in 1987, unable to support each other through their shared grief. Maria moved to Dallas and worked under her maiden name. Carlos Sr. stayed in Beaumont and became a private investigator, specializing in missing person cases, hoping that helping other families might somehow lead him back to his own children. For 41 years, the disappearance of the Martinez children remained one of Texas's most baffling unsolved cases. Then, in March 2024, everything changed. Jefferson Elementary School had been abandoned since 2019 when the school district consolidated facilities. The building sat empty for 5 years before the decision was made to demolish it and sell the land for commercial development. Demolition began on March 12, 2024, exactly 41 years after the children disappeared. On the third day, foreman Rick Santos made a discovery that would change everything. Santos was directing basement excavation when his equipment struck something unexpected. Instead of concrete floor, the excavator pulled up a wooden crate, sealed and hidden beneath a false floor that had been carefully disguised. "Stop everything," Santos called to his crew. He had worked demolition for 20 years and had developed an instinct for when something wasn't right. The crate was obviously old, but it had been placed deliberately and concealed with considerable skill. Santos called the Beaumont Police Department. Within an hour, Detective Laura Chen arrived with investigators. Chen had been assigned to the cold case unit 6 months earlier and was familiar with the Martinez file. The crate was carefully excavated and transported to the police station, where it was opened under controlled conditions. Inside, wrapped in plastic to protect them from decay, were 5 children's backpacks. The backpacks were immediately recognizable from evidence photos taken in 1983. Each one was labeled with a child's name in Maria Martinez's careful handwriting: Carlos Jr., Sofia, Miguel, Ana, and Rosa. But it was what was inside the backpacks that stunned investigators. Each backpack contained a letter written in a child's handwriting, addressed to Mama and Papa. The letters were dated March 15, 1983, the day the children disappeared, and they told a story that no one had imagined. Carlos Jr.'s letter was the longest and most detailed. "Dear Mama and Papa, I don't know if you will ever read this, but I wanted you to know what happened to us. We were walking to school like always when Mr. Henderson stopped his van and said there was an emergency at home. He said you were hurt, Mama, and that we needed to come with him right away. I didn't want to go because you always told us never to get in cars with people, but he knew our names and he knew about Papa's job and he seemed really worried about you. So I let him take us. I'm sorry. I know I was supposed to protect everyone and I failed. We are in a place with no windows, and we can hear other kids crying sometimes. Mr. Henderson says we have to stay here until things get better at home, but it's been hours and I don't think he's telling the truth. If something happens to us, please know that we love you and we tried to be good. Carlos Jr." Sofia's letter was shorter but equally heartbreaking. "Dear Mom and Papa, Carlos is trying to take care of us, but we are scared. The man who brought us here says his name is Mr. Henderson, but I don't think that's true. He looks like the man who sometimes watches us walk to school. I remember seeing him in his van before. I should have told Carlos, but I didn't think it was important. I'm sorry. We are trying to be brave like you taught us. Tell Mrs. Patterson we're sorry we missed school. Love, Sofia." The twins had written their letters together, Anna's handwriting careful and precise, Miguel's more hurried. "Mom and Papa, we want to come home. The man says we can't leave until he figures out what to do with us. He brings us food, but it tastes funny and makes us sleepy. Anna is getting sick. We keep asking when we can go home, and he gets angry. We are trying to help Carlos take care of Rosa, but she cries a lot. Please find us. Love, Anna and Miguel. Rosa's letter was written in the large, unsteady handwriting of a 6-year-old, with several words misspelled. Dear Mom and Papa, I want to go home. I don't like it here. The man is scary and the room is dark. Carlos holds my hand and Sofia sings to me, but I want you. I drew you a picture, but there's no paper here, so I drew it on the wall. I love you, Rosa. Detective Chen read the letters with tears in her eyes. After 41 years, the Martinez children had finally been able to tell their story, but the letters raised as many questions as they answered. Who was the man the children called Mr. Henderson? How had the backpacks ended up hidden in the basement of Jefferson Elementary? And most importantly, where were the children now? The investigation that followed was swift and intense. The name Henderson was cross-referenced with every employee, volunteer, and contractor who had worked at Jefferson Elementary in 1983. They found their answer in the personnel files. James Henderson had been hired as a part-time janitor at Jefferson Elementary in January 1983, just 2 months before the children disappeared. His employment application listed previous janitorial experience at schools in Louisiana and Mississippi, but when investigators checked those references, they discovered that Henderson had provided false information about his background. Henderson's real name was James Holbrook, and he had been released from a Louisiana state prison in December 1982 after serving 8 years for child abduction. He had moved to Texas under an assumed identity and somehow managed to get hired at Jefferson Elementary despite his criminal history. A failure of the background check system that would have tragic consequences. Henderson had access to the entire school building, including the basement storage areas where he had apparently prepared a hiding place for his victims. The children's letters suggested they had been held in the school's basement, hidden just yards away from their classmates and teachers. But Henderson himself was no longer alive to face justice. Prison records from Louisiana showed that he had died in a fight at Angola State Penitentiary in 1987, 4 years after the Martinez children disappeared. He had been sentenced to life without parole for murdering a police officer during a failed escape attempt. The timeline painted a horrific picture. Henderson had abducted the Martinez children on their way to school, hidden them in the basement of Jefferson Elementary, and kept them there for an unknown period before presumably killing them and disposing of their bodies. He had then carefully concealed the children's backpacks in a specially constructed hiding place, perhaps planning to retrieve them later or simply wanting to keep trophies of his crime. Ground-penetrating radar was brought in to scan the entire Jefferson Elementary property. The search revealed multiple anomalies in the soil, areas where the earth had been disturbed and then carefully regraded to hide evidence of digging. The excavation began in April 2024. Working with forensic anthropologists and careful archaeological techniques, investigators slowly uncovered the tragic truth about what had happened to the Martinez children. They found 5 small graves hidden beneath what had once been the school's playground. The children had been buried with care, wrapped in blankets and placed in wooden boxes that Henderson had apparently constructed himself. Despite 41 years in the ground, enough remains survived for positive identification through dental records. Carlos Jr., Sofia, Miguel, Anna, and Rosa Martinez were finally coming home. The medical examiner determined that the children had died within 48 hours of their abduction, most likely from drugs that Henderson had used to keep them docile. Their letters had been written during their final hours of life, perhaps when Henderson briefly left them alone and they realized they might not survive. Maria Martinez, now 75 and living in Dallas, was notified of the discovery by Detective Chen. After 41 years of not knowing, she finally had answers about what had happened to her children. The knowledge brought both relief and renewed grief, relief that they had been found, but profound sadness that they had died so young and so frightened. Carlos Sr. had passed away in 2019, 5 years before his children were found. He had spent the last 36 years of his life searching for them, never knowing they had been hidden less than a mile from where he continued to live. The discovery of the Martinez children led to a comprehensive review of missing child cases throughout Texas and the southeastern United States. Investigators identified at least 12 other unsolved disappearances that showed similarities to the Martinez case, children who had vanished near schools where Henderson or men matching his description had been seen. James Henderson had been a predator who moved from state to state, finding work in schools and using his access to identify and target vulnerable children. The Martinez children were probably not his first victims, and they might not have been his last. Jefferson Elementary School was not demolished. Instead, it was converted into a memorial center dedicated to missing children and their families. The basement where the children had been held was sealed and marked with a memorial plaque listing the names of Carlos Jr., Sofia, Miguel, Ana, and Rosa Martinez. Maria Martinez attended the memorial dedication ceremony, along with dozens of family members, friends, and community members who had never stopped hoping the children would be found. She read aloud from the letters her children had written during their final hours, sharing their words of love and their apologies for mistakes they had never made. They were trying to protect each other until the very end, Maria said through her tears. Carlos was taking care of his sisters and brother, just like he always did. Sofia was being responsible and thoughtful. The twins were helping each other be brave, and Rosa was drawing pictures on the wall because she couldn't draw them on paper. They were still my babies, even in that terrible place. The Martinez case became a catalyst for changes in school hiring practices throughout Texas. New laws required more thorough background checks for all school employees, including contractors and part-time workers. A database was created to track employees who moved between school districts, making it harder for predators to hide their histories by crossing state lines. But for Maria Martinez, the most important outcome was simpler. After 41 years, she finally knew where her children were. They had been found, they had been brought home, and their story had finally been told. The letters the children wrote in their final hours revealed something that all the police investigations and FBI searches had missed. The Martinez children had faced their terrifying situation with courage, love, and concern for each other. Even in the darkest moments of their short lives, they had remained the good, caring children their parents had raised them to be. Sometimes the most important evidence is hidden in the most unexpected places. Sometimes justice takes 41 years to arrive, and sometimes the bravest voices belong to children who knew they might never be heard, but who wrote their love on paper anyway, hoping someone would eventually find their words and bring them home. The Martinez children finally made it to school on March 15, 2024. Not to Jefferson Elementary, where they had been hidden for 4 decades, but to their final resting place in Beaumont Memorial Gardens, where their parents could visit them and where their story would never be forgotten.